The LeMans Classic with Richard Mille and EFG Bank.
LeMans Classic, powered by RadioLeMans.com.
Hello there, I'm John Hindorf and welcome to MotorsTV's coverage of Le Mans Classic 2010. I'm here at the Le Mans Heritage Club at the top of the village, and my goodness me, just look how busy it is over here. This car, not particularly successful in 1999 when it made its debut, the Audi R8 Coupe, but it did signify the start of a very important partnership and interest for Audi and the 24-hour race that's seen them be so successful, of course, in the last 10 years. Well, in this show, we'll be looking a little further back in time as far as Le Mans Heritage is concerned, as we bring you the best of the action from on the track, the atmosphere from around the grids and the paddocks, and of course, we'll be welcoming some more guests to our super studio set down at the top of the paddock village. So stay with us for more from Le Mans Classic 2010 here on MotorsTV.
It's the traditional Le Mans start for the Plateau 4 entries. Getting a round of applause. The E-Types, the 41 car, getting away first, but just not quite getting into second gear. Now remember, this is all for show, because the cars will be pulled up on the run down to the Tête Rouge corner. Here's our camera car, Hans Hugenholtz in the Ford GT40. Can't get out, take your life in your hands, get the foot down, son, that's it. That is a Ford V8 right behind your head. Now everybody just slowing down again, because they'll be stopped in a moment or two's time whilst the organisers put everyone in the correct order, and there it is happening right before your eyes. Right hand side of the screen, the yellow hairy canary Cobra. What a race history that car has got. A nice little GT6 at the back there, the number 19 car. That's James Bordier's Triumph Spitfire, in fact. Now everybody just about getting into grid order. Crossing the line then to get the race underway properly. Christian Glezel in the Ford GT gets a jump at the start. And the darker of the Ford GTs making its bid for freedom early on as they go under the Dunlop Bridge for the first time. Christian Glezel, a man on a mission here, as he began to pull away early on from our camera car of Hans Hugenholtz, the Dutchman. Further back down the field, one of a number of beautiful Cobras. Steve Hitchen's car there that he's sharing with Bernard Peruche. Well, Christian Glezel clearly with the measure of the big Ford. Hugenholtz going through in second. That's going to be expensive if he hits the wall, and he does. Oh dear me. Gregory Noble in the 275 GTB with an Armco-sized dent in the right front wing. It's not going to polish out either. It's an unusual line even for a Lotus Elan. Georges Verquin in the 1965 car going through just a little bit offline. Here's our camera car. Stand by for pit stops. Already 1 or 2 cars in. Recognise those. Pedro Lami's overalls. A man who's well used to being here for Peugeot. A leisurely pit stop for the 41. Daniel Spadini handing over to Ravi Venkachalam. Meanwhile, at the front of the field, it was still Christian Gleason. And he's having fun, isn't he? The Alpine Renault M65 there as the pits getting quite busy. The Lotus Elan number 11. Jean-Philippe Debris taking that out, having taken it over from Jean Legras. And there's another interesting car, the 6 car, Carlos Monteverde's machine, with Tommy Erdos, one of the drivers there, another man who is well used to Le Mans, twice a winner here with RML. Slippery surface flag there on the right hand side. Someone's had a problem. Is it this Jaguar? Carlos Barbosa. Pedro Lamy about to get into the Jaguar. No, he's fine. And there, with his HDI Peugeot overalls and a very not HDI petrol-engined Jaguar, goes out of the pits in the hands of Pedro Lamy. Still Gleazel at the front of the field in the Ford GT40. Hans Hugenholtz now coming into the pit lane, and he's following in the Sunbeam Alpine, the 1962 car. Keith Hampson's in there, and he'll be handing over to Tristan Brayfield. Now Hans is driving on his own, so he's got to time this right. 90 seconds from pit in to pit out. So a lot of the guys carrying a stopwatch. Oh, a lot of smoke in the car, he said. So this may be longer than a 90-second stop. And yes, the engine cover's been taken off at the back. Yeah, was that just overfilled with oil? Well, doesn't seem overly concerned. The engine cover's going back on as Keith Hampston's Alpine goes out now in the hands of Tristan Bradfield behind him. And they've fired up Hans. And he picks his way out of a very busy pit now. Meantime, that's allowed the Ford GT40 of Diogo Ferrao and Manuel Ferrao to move up the fields. As there's the Triumph Spitfire battling with the Porsche 911 and an early TVR. Still the slippery surface flags out at Arnage. Bernard Persch in the Cobra, and there's Hugenholtz back out again. That car seems to be going well, so perhaps none the worse for its early stop. Listen how early he gets on the power here. Marvellous stuff. Something a little more restrained, the Lotus Elan. This is Anthony Schwaben's car. Carlos Monteverde. Ford GT40 still holding up at the front of the field. Seen him for a little while. And that looked to be our leader back into the pits again. Christian Gleazel, and that's just him going out after his stop. There's 42 Ford GT. This is the Ferrao Portuguese car. GT40 with the rear cover. It's very, very hot, and I think a lot of teams worrying about too much oil being used in these races. There is the Portuguese driven Ford GT. Now I wonder if he's had a bit of oil on his tyres there. He saved it well at the chicane. Now he's got to find a spot in the traffic here. And the flag's being waved in the background as through goes an earlier Ford Mark III, that looked like. Ford GT going through. 57 is the Abarth Simca. Lovely little car. Beautifully packaged. Whilst Christian Glazel continues picking his way through traffic, including a very pretty grey Ferrari 275 GTBC. Well, from the moment the green light came on, it's been all about Christian Glazel. There's the checkered flag, and the 34 car wins it from the 22 AC Cobra in second, and the Ford GT40, the 42 car, the Portuguese brothers, in third. Here's the start of Plateau number 5, their first race, and a pretty decent run across the start-finish line for the pole-sitting Ligier, pressed hard by the Chevron B16 of John Sheldon, on board with the classic 917 Porsche, which is our camera car. What a view, what a view that is. Philippe Perga, Jean-Claude Andouet and Eric Chaud in the Chevron B16, the white 1971 car. There's our camera car again, and how evocative is that? Down at Mulsanne corner, the Ligier already making a bit of a break for it. A little further back, another fantastic looking car, the Lola T70 Mark III of Bernard Dunier. But already you can see that Ligier, a thoroughly modern looking car, isn't it? Getting away. In second place, the Ferrari P3 at the moment. That's Gregor Fisken, Bobby Verdenrohe, Harry Leventis, little TVR there, just going through with the Ford Cortina rear lights. Do you know, that wouldn't look too out of place in the American Le Mans series. Back on board our 917. The only thing that really marks these cars out as being a little bit older, there's the second place machine, is just watch how much they roll, which is just slightly more than we're used to seeing there. But that Ligier GS3 goes through, having built up a very decent lead indeed to the second place Ferrari P3. As the battle between the Porsche and the Lola T70 continues. First of the pit stops. This is a little bit early for a rather leery coloured Porsche. That's not a Porsche at all, is it? My apologies. That's Jim Prentice coming in the change of body to the more aerodynamic design. Not sure it ever ran in that colour scheme when it was contemporary. The Austin Healey Le Mans Sprite. The cam tail back out into the action. 90 seconds for pit in to pit out. There's Neil Primrose, the drummer from Travis, going through, one of our guests on MotorsTV this week. That was the Lola T212, the 71 car that he shares with David Gathercole. Not been the best of weekends for Neil. Plenty of GT cars as well, including the Ford GT40s. There was a rumbling Corvette in there as well, wasn't there? Back to the Ligier. Very stable indeed over the bumpy entrance to the braking zone at Mulsanne corner. Now, once again, the very evocative colours. It just shouts Le Mans, that car, doesn't it? And as at Le Mans right now, the distinction between the classes always been part of what's going. Beautiful 275 GTB. Jan Giesen has brought the 53 car to play. 914 Porsche there as well, just going through. No real need to look in the mirrors. Look how hard the wheel is turned there and a slow speed to get round Arnage. Oh, someone going off the circuit there. No, it's not. It's a blow up. Look at that. Pieces of the car going everywhere from that beautiful Porsche 9082. That's one of the Flunders, and that is driven by Miguel Amaral, and I'm afraid that car is going no further, either an engine or a gearbox problem. Marshall's very quickly on this. Well, cut the engine. I think he knows that, to be quite honest. Second place car being pushed relatively hard. And the Vern Schuppen Richard Atwood Porsche 917. Looks pretty stable as well, doesn't it? An eclectic mix in Plateau 5. As through goes the Abarth 100 SP. That's a 67 car driven by Takayashi Kurokawa. Everybody enjoying their day in the sun, literally as well as metaphorically, here at Le Mans 2010. And well, that Ferrari is being pushed along very hard indeed, and all of its cylinders giving every single ounce of horsepower. Oliver Casilieres in the Chevron B16 with the Mazda engine, the white car there. Mazda, a long association with Le Mans, and still the only Japanese manufacturer to have won the 24-hour race here. That a very early example of the Mazda engine with the twin rotor engine. Back down at Mulsanne corner, and again, just look at the compression on the front suspension. A little bit smoky, that Porsche, but that's nothing to worry too much about. These cars all burn a little bit of oil. We're so used now to seeing cars being super reliable. Fantastic. That we like a lot. Yanis Iglesias and Antonius Tricas in the 9082. Another one of the Lola T70s there, and you can see there's a bit of oil down in the background as through goes Dominic Gunnar in the Matra. Another very distinctive car. At the front of the field, however, in elegant isolation for the bulk of the race, the 34 Ligier. Looking down through the rest of the fields, the Stephen Reed and David Franklin Ferrari 512M making an appearance on the screen there. Corvette, Porsche, Ford all together and well into the lapping now. There's a smaller Chevron, gets taken by the leader. Second place car. Still the Ferrari P3. Getting on for a minute behind the leader though. And another 15 seconds further back, the third place car. There's Simon Hadfield's Chevron B16 in the maroon colour. Very elegant in that colour, I do think. And the other T7, one of the other T70s there of Bernard Junier. Let's get back up to the front of the field again. Second place car now having to fight its way through. And it's just getting a little bit slippery. So really no contest here then in the first race for Plateau number 5. Leo Valladolid is in the Lola in 4th position. Bernard Tunet in the 21 car in 3rd. The Ferrari P3 of Harry Leventis, Gregor Fisk and Bobby Verden-Rowe would be second to this car, which dominated from the moment the red lights went out. Jacques Nicolet and Jean-Marc Lucot. And our camera car, the 42 car, would finish 6th. Welcome to the Le Mans Heritage Club. This is where the most beautiful cars of Le Mans are sitting this weekend. All of these machines have participated in the 24 hours at least once, the oldest back in 1927, the most recent, the Audi Coupe you saw there from 1999. There's a jury in charge of looking at these cars and deciding which one best represents the heritage of the 24 hours. This is Jean-Pierre Plouet from Citroën, the man behind the Citroën Survolt. He says, I've accepted this with a lot of pride. It's a big challenge and a first time for me. Not going to be easy, but I have got a lot of people around me who are specialists, men who know the history of motorsports, but I'm a proud member of the jury and I'll accept it with pleasure and honour. I'm president of the 4th category, that's 1966 to 1971. Wonderful category. Happy to be involved in this part of the weekend. 24 cars, 8 age classes and points scored in several different categories.
You have to be invited and your car has to be important enough to represent a historic element, a historic moment in the history of Le Mans. More than anything else, we are here celebrating history, and I think the history of Le Mans, as you see from these cars, is very apparent. And it's a very, very tough job, but each car has its advantages and disadvantages. Each car has its moments in history, and hopefully we can find a car that may have just a little bit more importance in history. As we know, there are some cars that remain in our mind all our lives, and these are the most important, that made a difference to racing, that made a difference to everyday cars. What did all these cars do after they won? What did we learn from them? And I think that's very important as well.
Don't envy their job, do you?
Ça se passe bien dans la mesure où c'est très difficile.
Well, we're being told it's very difficult because we have to choose between Rondo, Matra, Monet, and that of course was the car that had the lady crew that won the category in 75. It's very hard, but the harder the better. Maybe it should be an easy win for the Rondo because that car's positive points are very numerous. It has a lot of authenticity to it. Matra has a lot of positive points, but it's not in the Le Mans configuration. It's in the 1000k configuration. The Monet is an original car, but it's got some restored parts, so that's a bit uncomfortable to us. The judges would have liked to have seen that 100% original. We have to develop a Le Mans spirit here. We're not Pebble Beach, we're not Laguna Seca. We need to have our own spirit. There are more and more beautiful things, he says, but we can't just go for beautiful and shiny. Now here's the Porsche 917, one of the favourites for the best in show. Of course, it won in 1971.
Donc cette voiture a pris 388 km/h avec
388 km an hour with Gérard Lerousse on the Honor. That's why the FIA, of course, got a little bit scared and decided to reduce the engine size from 5 litres to 3 litres in 1972. You can say, yes, we're reaching speed highlights, but that's why this car is what it is. It's mythical. It could go to 400 kilometers an hour at the time. No protections or walls if you went off the tracks. There was only big trees. And when you see where the pedal box is and the driver's feet, well, Gérard Lerousse told me earlier, he says thinks he was a bit mad to drive that car. So here's the final winner, the Adler from 1937. in the middle of a complete restoration for a real historical look. The red lights are out and plateau number 6 are racing for the first time at Le Mans 2010. And here's what the run up the hill looks like from the pole-sitting Porsche. That's what's going on behind. The 936 already with a decent run has pulled away from the rest of the field. These are the newest cars, the youngest cars in the Classic Le Mans. And as you can see, quite a lot of things that are very recognisable as GT cars, BMW in there, Porsche. And this, well, another classic Le Mans livery, the striped colours of a well-known drinks company, which isn't allowed to be on there now, as the rest of the field floods down over the rise just before this heavy braking area into Mulsanne corner. Interesting to see the differences there between the GT cars and the prototypes. David Ferrer there in the Lola T280 just tussling with a Porsche. Oh, hello, that's not supposed to be in this one. That's the next set of cars getting ready to come out, I believe. Old Bugatti. And looking further down the field, Chris McAllister in the Gulf Mirage. Another car with massive Le Mans history. And a very racing looking Diego Maria in the Lola T298 with Patrice Lafargue looking to defend there. Ludwig Caron, it was in fact, who was doing the defending. Russell Busts, Chevron, David Freeman, John Clark sharing, and pit stop time. It's got to be done carefully and correctly. Just get the driver belted in, or there will be sanctions. That is the number 40, which is of course the Datsun 240Z. 40 years of the Z cars, and hence the number. And at the back of the paddock there's a tremendous display of Nissans, Datsuns, charting the history of their sports car. And the 370 and the GT are, oh, as off, taking a very unusual line there goes the Lola T280 HU4 of Michael Cunu, and he's in trouble there. I'll finish the thought about the Nissans. The GT-R and the 370 are on demo lap duty this weekend as well. Chris McAllister pedalling that 1972 Gulf Mirage. Now look at these two. Paul Knapfield in the blue Ferrari BB LM, the 512, just being passed by the similar car as they came into Mulsanne. As the pit stops are off in earnest now, Kevin Wilkins and Mike Catlow doing the change in the Lola T296 from 1977, another one of Huntingdon's finest. And the 35 is that T280 we saw earlier on, and that, although I'm not a tyre engineer, is not right, is it? Now, has that been catching? Something has got amongst that tyre. Oh no, that's just had the tread go, I'm afraid. That could be the heat here, been extremely hot today. 36 degrees Celsius, and now the wheel won't seat properly and it's all taking time. Meanwhile, back out on the track, there is the Mirage. Just look how small that is for a prototype. Some of the other cars that are much longer and wider. As in comes Patrice Lafargue in the Lola T298. Now he's driving on his own, so it's a question of timing this right. 90 seconds from pit in to pit out, otherwise if you're a little bit too quick you will attract the notice of the stewards. Among the GT cars, Mark Bullitt in the Porsche 935, the big wide arches. He's got Luke as well in the 62 car, Luke Bullitt. Out then goes the 44. No driver change there. Patrice Lafargue having all the fun on his own. Back to the leader. Jean-Marc Lucot and Jacques Nicolet have had a great pairing for a number of years now. And Patrice Lafargue trying to chase them down. Chris McAllister in the Mirage also doing his best to keep the pace up. Now I would say that's a bit quick for the pit lane, but what do I know? That might well be a penalty later on. This looks like an unscheduled stop. It is. Frédéric de Rocha, Guy Lacroix and Jean Lacroix of our colleagues here at Motors TV. They're supporting him. Go on, Jean-Luc. Doesn't look good news, I'm afraid. The body panel's coming off to have a look at the back of the car. It's still the Porsche versus the Gulf Mirage at the head of the field. Meantime, this is all, I'm afraid, time ebbing away in the pit lane. Oh dear, driver getting out. Best not sit next to him at dinner this evening. Ah, the venerable Ford Capri RS. Yes, I took my last victory in a Capri a couple of years ago. We're heading towards the end then of this first race for the Plateau 6 cars. Let's have a quick look down through the field as Oliver Casilaris goes straight on Indianapolis and reenacting the scene from the movie in that Decadene Duckham's car. But at the head of the field, in third position, Patrice Lafargue in the Lola T298, the 44 car. Chris McAllister in second in the Gulf Mirage. And our winner, Jean-Marc Lucot, Jacques Nicolet in the Porsche 936.
The Le Mans Classic with Richard Mille and EFG Bank.
Le Mans Classic, powered by RadioLeMans.com.
750 brake horsepower, driving for the football teams of Tottenham, Liverpool and Madrid. And of course, support races by the Dutch Supercar Challenge and Bosch Grand Prix. For tickets and information, check zoldersuperleague.be. So that's the place where you need to be, 17th and 18th of July.
Be sure to join Motors TV this Sunday, July the 18th for an Australian motor racing doubleheader. The action gets underway with a V8 Trans-Tasman Challenge at 2:50 in the afternoon. Then from 3:45 it will be Jamie Whincup, James Courtney, Greg Lowndes and all the other stars in the V8 Supercars in action in round 8 of the season from Townsville.
The Le Mans Classic with Richard Mille and EFG Bank.
Le Mans Classic, powered by RadioLeMans.com. Motor racing often seen as a bit of a selfish sport, but let's put that to one side here, because here's a team who are raising money for a very good cause indeed. Here's Jean-Francois Benz, the man behind the charity for children's cardiac assistance. He says, from Le Mans Classic, we've organised a rally and took cars from Paris to Le Mans. Clubs have selected 6 cars that are available with drivers and a passenger, and then basically we sell them to 6 different companies. And how much did you get from that? Says Arnaud. Well, we raised 65,000 euros, and that will be over 55,000 euros for us, plus the money that is currently collected thanks to all kinds of donations from the drivers and a lot of other people, as well as the shop above the circuit and Optic 2000, one of our supporters. What does the money do? Well, this money will allow us to have heart surgery for 6 children. At the beginning of this heart rally, a little African kid, Kashim, who was here with his cap of the Ferrari club, was very proud and marvellous. Now, how long have you been going? Since 1996, and from 2002, we've had the mercenary action in motorsport from Le Mans Classic 2002. Patrick Peter has always supported us, and we're welcomed again this year. We've had money to save 50 children now.
Depuis donc le Mans Classique 2002 et le soutien de Patrick Peter qui toujours, je dirais, nous a soutenus, nous a aidés, nous a ouvert les portes, et encore cette année nous a ouvert les portes. Nous avons pu collecter environ de quoi sauver environ une cinquantaine d'enfants en fait.
So next time you look at a racing car, make sure you check out all of the decals. You never know who they might be helping. The oldest cars at the Le Mans Classic 2010, once again the Plateau #1 machines, and here they are starting their first races. It begins to go into, if not the twilight, definitely the gloaming, that magic hour when everything looks even better than normal. Beautiful little BMW just going through the shot there. An eclectic mix of big ones versus little ones. Ooh. Air conditioning needs just turning down a bit on the 67 there, thanks very much. This plateau spanning an era where the pace of change was still very, very quick indeed. And the cars really look very different in some cases from each other. The Talbot 105 team cars all here, the Go 52, Go 54 and Go 51 machines. And as you can see, these old cars really do bring out the crowd to the fence line. Opportunity for fantastic pictures. So the leader, the number 4 Talbot, and that is Go 52. Alex Ames, Julian Bronson, Gareth Burnett, Albert Otten in the BMW 328. I say Go 52 because that's the registration number of the car, harking back to the days when the cars were driven across the continent of France down to the race at Le Mans. 36 there, just coming through, that elegant shade of dark maroon. Colin Bugler's Lagonda, what a beautiful 1937 version that is, and he's having a little tussle trying to make up some positions. Lagonda with a V12 engine designed by W.O. Bentley, and the 57 Lagonda, Richard Ray Smith and Peter Fenishal's car in the pits for an unscheduled stop, and I think the red fluid on the ground rather gave that away. I'm sure that Lagonda's going to go very much further than the end of the pit lane. Let's get back to the leader. Note the clever dipping headlight device. The headlights turned up there, so they're not needed. But for the full face helmet, that could have been gone back sort of 60, 70 years, and gets proper appreciation from the crowd for that. And here's what I was talking about the difference in cars. That tiny little BMW, then our camera car there heading through. Go 52. And Look at how hard the drivers are having to work. These cars move around. Patrick Blakely-Edwards, Simon Blakely-Edwards and Richard Hope in the Invicta. Another elegant car from the late 20s. The 70 is Eric Perou's Delage. And again, crowd-pleasing antics at Mulsanne. Slight problem with the left-hand marker light there, just a little loose wire on the 64 car as it goes through. 5 on the bonnet just to confuse me. That was Mark Lee Midgley in the Aston Martin Ulster, sharing with Andy Bell. And the 35 there is Didier Marty's HRG 1500. That can't be anything else other than a Bugatti 35B, the 29 car. And now back to the sharper end of the field. And Albert Otten in the 328. Now, how beautiful is that? The 28 Lagonda V12 of Klaus Lehr, how low slung to the ground, a real piece of racing machinery. Mark Overington in the blower Bentley, the 1929. And the pit stops coming thick and fast now. As this number 19 car, the Montier Ford Model T. This car competed in the very first Le Mans 24 Hours in 1923. Alpha problems. Didn't look good driving across there. Is that the 8C that's come to an ignominious end? And the Simca 8, built in a collaboration with Fiat in the 20s and 30s in a factory on the outskirts of Paris. Back to Gareth Burnett in the Go 52 Talbot. And there is his competition. And you couldn't have two cars that look much different than that in the same era, could you? Lagonda, HRG, all fighting at the front of the field. Listen to the wheel spin. Such a shame that we've lost so many of these marks now. Talbot have disappeared into Chrysler, didn't it, in the 80s. BMW's still going, I hear, and still building neat little roadsters. I suppose you could call that the predecessor of the Z4. Blue flags out, always a traffic problem here at Le Mans, as through goes the very elegant Patrick Blakely-Edwards in his Invicta Tourer from 1929. Always entertaining the Plateau number 1. In third place then in this first race, the Talbot 105 number 7 BGH 21. Second place, the little BMW 328, the 26 car of Albert Otten. And winning Go 52, the number 4 Talbot.
Well, joining me now here on this wonderful Citroën DS platform, which has been our stage for the last few days, is a man who's, like me, getting his first taste of the Le Mans Classic, Tommy Erdos. Now, normally, Tommy, you and I are talking at Le Mans Series races when you race with Mike Newton with RML in that really lovely HPD-powered Lola Coupe. This is a bit different, isn't it?
This is very different. It's been a real pleasure to be here the weekend, and I have to thank obviously many people, but Carlos Monteverde, who has invited me to come here and drive his cars, and obviously Gary Pearson, who's preparing the cars for us this weekend. But it's been a real educational trip, really. I've never been here at the Classic, and I'm beginning to learn a lot about the history of sports cars, really.
You're a professional racing driver. You have been for the majority of your life, coming up through single-seaters and making a career in the last few years, a very good career in sports car racing. Twice a winner in class here at Le Mans with RML and Mike Newton. As a professional racing driver, before you came here, and I want you to be honest now, how did you view the classic car scene and how did you view some of the older cars?
To be honest, I never really took much interest in them. I always thought that, yes, I appreciated the history to a degree, because without that, we wouldn't have the cars of today and the cars that I'm driving now. But I kind of sort of brushed it aside, you know, I never really experienced it. And I have to say, coming here now and spending the last couple of days with the team and seeing all these fantastic cars and to be honest, learning a bit of the history about what the cars meant to the people that were driving at the time, it really, you know, you can get actually quite emotional about some of it, and it's been an incredible journey, really, being here. So it's been a great experience so far.
In some ways, Tommy, do you have to almost blank your mind off and start again when you approach these cars? I mean, you're incredibly lucky here, let's be honest, because the cars that you're involved with are absolute classics. Ford GT40, Ferrari 512. I mean, these are absolute, massively mythical classic cars in sports car history, but they're not like modern sports cars, are they?
No, that's right. I think it's very, very true. You have to really kind of wipe that off your memory as far as the modern cars are concerned, because of course they don't corner, they don't brake as well, they don't, you know, that's why the evolution of motor racing has gone as far as it has up today. You know, a 512, but you can't compare things like a 512 and a Ford GT40. The design of it, the sound that the engines make, and again, once you learn about the history and the people that were involved driving it, you know, it means a lot. It starts to mean a lot to you. So, yeah, obviously they're not as good from a performance level on track, but I think it's wrong to compare that. I think you have to really appreciate the cars for what they are.
Well, the biggest thing, of course, that must hit you straight away is no downforce. That Lola Coupe that you drive has got a ton of downforce. You really attack the corners, you brake super late, and you carry as much speed to and through the apex as possible. Now, try that with either of the cars that you've got, and you've got a very expensive bill coming your way.
Absolutely, that's right. And I think the first thing that you have to really learn is how to, you know, to get your braking points a little bit, well, quite a lot earlier. Yeah, your entry speeds are so much slower in these cars, not only because of the downforce, but the tire technology has moved on incredibly. You know, we're driving obviously threaded tires here at Le Mans with these cars. Yeah, just very, very slower, much slower cornering speeds.
There are people all over in front of their televisions at the moment watching and listening to this and saying, 512, it's one of the real classics. It's 40 years since the movie Le Mans this year. It was one of the stars of the movie, along with the car behind us, the 917 Porsche. What is it like to sit behind the wheel of a Ferrari 512 and take it out the pits and then drive under the Dunlop Bridge up round the corner there?
Well, it's difficult to describe that. It is a feeling that you get in the car when that engine comes on song and starts to literally sing behind you. And I think, you know, a year or so ago, you'd tell me that, you know, what do you think it's like to drive a 512? I said, well, yeah, it's a nice car, perhaps it has nice history at Le Mans. But until you actually drive one, and especially here, I have to say, to drive it here at Le Mans, it's just, I'm so incredibly lucky to have given this opportunity, and I took the car out last night for the first time. In fact, I hadn't driven it before. Sat in the car, they put a few cushions behind me, and I said, off you go. And it was incredible. I mean, I got to the first chicane up to 4,000 revs. The engine was a little bit rough, didn't really, it seemed to don't want to clean up. And then as I started to rev the engine when we got onto the Mulsanne, and as soon as I went above 4,000 revs, that engine just came to life, and it just started to sing all the way up to 7,000, and it was just the most incredible feeling.
That is still an obscenely quick car, isn't it?
Oh yes, absolutely.
And what sort of speeds do you think you're pulling in that with the revs you're pulling on that?
Do you know, it felt like you're doing 250 miles an hour. I'm sure we were not doing that, but you know, obviously because, as you say, the lack of downforce and the car does move around a little bit, but I don't know what the horsepower figure is on a 512, and but you know, it did feel like it had on the plus side of 500 horsepower, and it delivered it very well as well. So very fast. But I mean, I think on full blast coming up to the first chicane, I'll be surprised if we don't get up to about 180 miles an hour.
That's still impressive, isn't it? Really.
Very much so.
Now, you said it's a very different car. The 512 is a very different car from the GT40. and it's been hot today. That's a completely closed car. How's that been in? Well, it's been hot over the weekend. How's that been to drive the GT40? I know the engine's behind you, but it's a very different animal again. And we were talking before we sat here about air conditioning now in cars, which we're so used to in sports production, sports prototype cars.
That's right.
So, and nothing like this in the GT40. So was that a bit of a chore, was it?
Very much so. I think rightly so. The organisers saw that the heat inside the cockpit is something that it is a safety issue. We have longer races. I think nowadays in 6-hour races, on a regular basis, and. As you say, we have air conditioning systems now to keep the driver somewhat cool. Now, when you say you have air conditioning systems in the modern cars, it's not like the road car where it actually makes the ambient nice and cool. It's still quite warm, but the temperature inside the GT40, for example, yesterday during the day must have been something, approaching 60 degrees. And
it would only be 30. I think it's only allowed to be 32, isn't it, in a sports car?
That's right. Yeah, you allow only a maximum of 32 degrees. If it goes beyond that, you're literally black flagged. You're not allowed to continue. So they take it quite serious now, heat in the cockpit. But obviously the drivers of the past, they didn't have those luxuries. They had to just carry on with it.
Can you imagine 19? Right, let's take you back. You've driven the 512 now, and you've driven the GT40. Let's take you back to 1970. Let's imagine you're here driving a 512. Only two of you, and it's weather like this. Can you imagine what that would have been like?
Incredible, absolutely. But it's funny you say that, because when I was driving the 512 last night, there was a moment where I started to think those guys that were driving it then, Richard Atwood, in the Porsche, and I don't know the names of the past, that were driving those cars, and those guys were brave, slightly mad probably, but they were incredibly brave. And let's face it, that was the technology at the time. They had no choice. They were driving the best machineries at the time. But yeah, there was different days for sure.
Now, earlier on this weekend, I had the great pleasure and honour to talk to Vic Elford. He was sitting right there where you are. And we were talking about the demise of the driving all-rounder. You just don't seem to see it anymore, like he was. Rally, touring cars, sports cars, even right up to Formula One. Now, whilst you don't do quite as much as that, you and Mike Newton, who are that great team for RML in that Lola HPD, you've done quite a few other things as well, because he's got a little stable of cars that he likes to bring out here and there, including some quite weird and wonderful things that you guys have been racing in endurance races.
That's right, yes. I mean, we had a combination of cars that we've driven from the Celine GT car, the RML built, and we've driven even a Ford Falcon V8, an Australian touring car. Yeah. That's right, yes. We took a Porsche GT3 to Australia and did Bathurst, and that was fantastic. What a fantastic circuit! But it's been a real fantastic journey, the whole RML journey with Mike Newton and his cars, and a bunch of very enthusiastic people, and we are in our 7th year now, I think, as a team. And again, knock on wood, may continue. So
let's just finish off here this weekend. We've got a couple of minutes to go before we need to let you go and do the rest of the things you're doing here, driving here this weekend. You said you didn't know much about it when you came here. Like me, I think you've been blown away by the size and the scale and the scope of this event. Are you now a convert to this type of classic meeting? I mean, Le Mans is Le Mans, but this meeting and the type of people I've met here and talked to this weekend, it's blown me away. What about you?
Absolutely. I think the most important thing that I'm taking out of this weekend for me personally is I think this meeting is about the celebration of sports car racing. And this meeting, more than any other meeting that I've been to, is celebrating the cars. I mean, there are some incredible cars here, and they all have a history and a story to tell about what they've been through. And I think it's important to celebrate that and to understand where we are today, because they were the predecessors of what we drive nowadays. And it's been an exciting weekend, and I've learned a lot, and I hope to come back to similar meetings.
Does it slightly change your mindset, Tommy? Because everything that you've been used to in your professional career is about, I want to go quicker, and I particularly want to go quicker than everybody else. And you come here, and all right, you're driving some very exotic machinery, but I know it's competitive here, but winning isn't everything here. Taking part and being part of the ambience and the atmosphere is just as important.
I think so. For this type of meeting, for sure, I think that's the spirit that they should carry on. In fact, I have seen some fairly I would say perhaps over-competitive driving, if you will, because I mean these cars, at the end of the day, you know, they are 40, 50, 60 years old, and let's face the safety aspect of these cars have improved a great deal, and I think that people should perhaps you know, don't go too serious about it. You know, look after yourselves. Don't, you know, it's about celebrating, I think, the cars and what they mean, rather than trying the last tent, because again, they're not exactly as safe as the cars of today. So people should perhaps be careful with that.
Tommy, thanks very much for being with us.
Real pleasure.
I'm glad you've enjoyed it. We'll see Tommy again when he competes at Portimao in the Le Mans series later on in the year, and then at Silverstone for the 1000 Ks as well. Good luck to you and to Mike Newton and your new teammate as well. You've got Ben Collins, the Steag, driving with you at
That's
Portimao.
right, yes. I wasn't sure you were allowed to say that, but you did.
Well,
anyway.
Everybody knows. Everybody knows. Tommy, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Stay with us on Motors TV. The temperature's coming down a little bit, and strangely, the drivers are starting to come out, and they want to come and talk to us, of course. Why wouldn't you? Motors TV, with everything that's great and good about Le Mans Classic 2010.
The Le Mans Classic with Richard Mille and EFG Bank.
Le Mans Classic, powered by RadioLeMans.com.
Nowhere else but on Motors TV are you, the racing enthusiast, treated to such a wide variety of your favourite sport, and tonight is no exception. The action gets underway at 7:15 with round 2 of the FIA European Drag Racing Championship of Alastaro in Sweden. And then at 8:10 it'll be round 4 of this year's Super 1 Rotax Series Karting Championship from Buckmore Park. Carlos Jimenez will be on home turf when he takes on Alex Salvini in their ongoing two-rider battle for supremacy in World MX3 Championship, when the series heads to La Beneza, Spain for round 8 of the season this Saturday, July the 17th at 12:40. Then the world's top asphalt dirt specialists from around the world will be in action at 1:05 in round 2 of the World Supermoto Championship from Germany. Rally Bulgaria with 6-time world champion Sebastian Loeb's chance to demonstrate his extraordinary tarmac skills at the wheel of his Citroën C4. Be sure to relive all the best moments from Bulgaria Friday, July the 16th from 10:20 right here on Motors TV.
The Le Mans Classic with Richard Mille and EFG Bank.
Le Mans Classic, powered by RadioLeMans.com.
Motors TV from the Le Mans Classic 2010. Welcome back to our salubrious surroundings. You can see now the paddock is quieting down a little bit. Nick Damon from RadioLeMans.com joins us. Nick, your first visit to the Classic here at Le Mans. Some initial impressions, please.
Well, I think I'm like a lot of modern motorsport fans. If you told me, do you want to spend a weekend looking at old cars going round, prior to Thursday, I said, well, not really, no, but I've been completely captivated by the history. And what I've particularly enjoyed is looking through the various, I'm going to call them pallets again, looking through the various plateaus. It's seeing the progression of technology in front of you, seeing the cars from 1923 to 1979, seeing as they've moved along, looking at the differences, the cars with the introduction of disc brakes, introduction of slicks, aerodynamics, and it's that sort of ability to actually look at the progression of the sports car through 50 years in front of your eyes. It'd be really, really interesting.
You spent, what, 7.5, nearly 8 years in the Formula One pit lane as a TV interviewer. You were the voice of the press conference. Famously, you made Michael Schumacher cry. Look it up on YouTube. Trust me, it's there. In that time, clearly Formula One is a technologically driven formula, and cars change from race to race. Traditionally, that's not the case in sports car racing. A design, even quite recently, like the Audi R8, can last 3, 4, 5, even 6 seasons in the case of the R8. So I see what you're saying there, but the pace of change tends to be a little bit slower in sports car racing.
I think that's true, but I think a lot of the innovation, what I think you see is that there's far more relevance to road technology comes out of sports cars. Certainly when we look at the Plateau 3 and Plateau 4 running through the mid-50s to early 60s, when the cars still looked like road cars, about super road cars, before they became what we would now begin to think of as sports prototypes. There you can see the real crossover relevance and how racing improves the breed. Looking at Formula One, the pace of Formula One is incredibly fast. We've got the two teams leading in F1 at the moment are both desperately trying to develop each one's innovation for the season. Red Bull are trying to develop the F-duct from McLaren. McLaren are trying to develop the blown diffuser, which they will do in 3 or 4 months. In sports cars, yes, it's perhaps 2 or 3 years, but in some ways, if you certainly these cars we're looking at here, it was so much more relevant, I think. There was so much more trickle down to other forms of racing as well, because Formula One as a whole is pretty much a dead end in racing. It's fantastic, it's fabulous, but it's a dead end. If you look at the trickle down from other sports cars to other forms of racing, be it club racing, be it touring cars, it's so much more obvious. And in some ways, for person who's very much driven much more by the technology and the speed and the personalities, which I have been. Oddly, when you work 7 years in F1, the personalities begin to annoy you rather than enthrall you, and you start getting far more interested in technology. Seeing this historical progression here is just so interesting.
Well, you mentioned that and the relevance to road cars. When the 24-hour race here at Le Mans started in 1923, the whole point of it was to prove the longevity and the reliability of road cars, and things like windscreens, windscreen wipers, disc brakes, to a certain extent fuel injection, and certainly even recently with Audi, fuel injection to a new level with the petrol engine, and of course the diesels with Peugeot and Audi have all been relevant to road cars. But look at something like, you know, this Porsche behind us, or a 512 or a Ford GT40. I'm sort of playing devil's advocate here, but where's the relevance there to road technology?
It's a very good point. I think that when you do begin to get to that sort of age of the early 70s, perhaps the cars in the Stephen McQueen movie we're paying homage to, at that point you begin to get more into the pure racing vehicle. But you come back 5 years and you look at things like tyre development, cars going from cross splies with tread to radial slicks, but more important the radial element, and you look at the development there, that came straight onto road cars. If you look at Mike Hawthorne did a lot of advertising back in the late 50s about his Jaguar cars that he'd raced at Le Mans, and how those Dunlop tyres were now being used on the road. And that was cross-ply, and then into with Michelin, obviously, developing radials. I think there's a huge amount of development there. And you think about it, with tyre development, there is much more crossover with an endurance series than and of course they ran one set of tyres than at a Grand Prix. And I think, again, we concentrate on disc brakes too much, but there's so many small little bits and bobs, light technology. Where would you need to know more about lighting than a motor race? And of course, in those days, Le Mans wasn't, whilst the premiere, wasn't the only endurance race. Yes. And sports cars, certainly running through, I would say, as far as perhaps the mid-70s, the world sports car champion, or what it was called, wasn't that far below F1. F1 didn't have that 95% slice of the cake it's now got. It was much more, perhaps 50%, perhaps even less, before Bernie so brilliantly captured the media.
I do think in all of this we can't lose sight of the fact that whilst Le Mans started quite clearly with road cars, very quickly people realised that the way to be very quick was to tune things up and build nice, glorious, sonorous engines like that. However, what I celebrate about Le Mans and about an event like this is the variety and basically I say this several times, actually. People who know me know that I've said this before. It's about different answers to the same question. The question is, make your car go as fast as it can for 24 hours. The answer is, well, what is your answer? Do you put the engine in the front or the back? Is it 4 cylinders, 6, 8? Is it in a line? Is it V? Is it flat? And I like to celebrate that diversity and the different thinking. Where I stumble now with Formula One is that it's becoming so proscriptive that it effectively legislates against people being clever and innovative, whereas sports car racing is much more inclusive and will bring the clever people in and go, that's a great idea, let's put you off over here and you can work on that.
Yeah, I think that as they've tried to reduce costs, they've, as you say quite rightly, begun to try also to legislate out innovation. The idea is that if someone comes with a really good idea, they know everyone will try and copy it, and that will bring in costs. So that's the prescriptive nature. I think that the biggest problem that F1 faces, which isn't affected by sports cars, is the single tyre supply. And I think that the greatest variable you can ever have in performance and in some cases the show is by having multiple tyre suppliers. And if we look at the progress that a number of suppliers have made in the last couple of years within the Le Mans and Le Mans series, you know, specifically Dunlop has suddenly come up and were dominating P2, and then suddenly Michelin went, hang on, we're going to go like this, and they raised their game. And then the same's happening with GT2, which of course is road relevant tyre technology. And these guys aren't doing it for the publicity on Monday, they're doing it to develop.
Drag you back to right now, because as you honestly admitted, you probably wouldn't have been your first choice of somewhere to be this weekend if had you not been working. And what surprised me about listening to you on the radio here at Le Mans and on radiolemans.com this weekend is how much you've got into the older cars, because I really struggle with the early cars, the pre-war racing cars. They seem very much of a muchness to me, the very big, angular, heavy cars. Okay, I'll appreciate the well-turned fender of a Bentley, a blower Bentley, but you've really got into some of those, and some of that early stuff, and particularly the early Italian stuff has really caught your eye.
Yeah, I appreciate the craftsmanship, and I also appreciate, I think it's the whole concept that these things were built and fettled and just created out of metal, a man with a lathe and a hammer and a big drill, which was, they are the antithesis of the modern vacuum-formed Formula One car, and I think that's what draws me, is the complete opposite.
And they smell, and they sound.
And they leak.
Yeah.
And the guys driving them are having a fabulous time, and some of them are really getting the spirit. We've got the guys in the Edwardian costumes almost, you know. But, you know, just putting it forward a few years, I was lucky enough to be on the grid for Le Mans this year, and I saw the faux Le Mans start they did, which was a bit of a damp squid in fairness, where they stood the drivers that ran across. And then we saw the real thing, a bait only to form a dummy grid for Plateau 3. And genuinely, that was one of the most exciting things I've ever seen in motorsport. I just loved it. It must have been great when they did it for real, because that was just a bit of fun the guys were having before reforming the grid.
But can you imagine what it was like in 1969, the last year that they did it?
Dangerous.
When you had all that power on the grid, and if you weren't keyed up enough before you got started, you had to run across the grid, get yourself in the car, somehow get your belts on or not. Of course, tragically, we know that was the case for one of the drivers. And you know, that couldn't have done anything for your heart rate.
No, I completely understand why the organisers have banned it, but it's fabulous when you can do it. You know, listen, a lot of things that are great have been banned, John. You know, but it was just the atmosphere and the cars trying to get away, and the guys who made a slight mistake. I think it was one of the cars was trying to make a perfect start, and he just didn't catch second gear, and the whole field swept past him. Now, it didn't matter, but I bet he felt a right lemon.
Well, I'm told by the organisers of the Snetterton 6 hours race in a bit later on in the year, the 360 Motor Club people, they're going to incorporate one of those Le Mans starts to that event, so clearly that's not just caught your eye. We've got a couple of minutes left. Cars here, I mean, it's almost unfair to say pick one out of the 460 odd that there are here, but can you narrow it down to a couple or three?
The blower Bentley, because
really?
that's my history. The first thing I ever knew about Le Mans was when I got a Ladybird book of cars, and about page 4 was about the Bentley boys, and then about page 12 was the Jaguars, the D-types and the C-types, and that sort of coincidental period. The blower Bentleys, anything Maserati, because I'm a Maserati obsessive, and a couple of the quirky things. I do like the fact that we talk a lot about the huge wealth of some of these owners. I love the garagistes, the guys who've spent their money, perhaps their retirement money, they've got their mate in who used to be a mechanic, they've rebuilt something odd like a Saab or a small pocket Renault, and they've brought it down here because they want to do Le Mans. And yes, they're not the fastest thing, but they've got the biggest smiles on their faces, and they've achieved something absolutely great because they brought something odd back to the plateaus.
Right, we've got 50 seconds left. We've converted you to sports cars from Formula One with the Le Mans 24 hours. Have we now got you at least more than a little bit interested in classic cars as well? And are you going to ditch your very thoroughly modern Jaguar for something a little bit more characterful?
I want a TR6.
Nick, thank you very much for Joining us, Nick Damon, who I think finally we're almost getting the Formula One bug out of his veins after he spent 7 years working for Bernie Ecclestone's TV channel in the pit lanes of Formula One all over the world. Well, Nick, thanks for joining us. It's been a fabulous evening here at Le Mans. There's still track action going on. You're watching MotorsTV at the Le Mans Classic for 2010. We move on now to the first race of Plateau number 2, and it's this point of the weekend that marks the competition entry for the Dutch Bonnet HBR 53. Patrick Rivet, our commentating colleague at MotorsTV, one of the driving talents. He's telling us that this is the first time the car will be going out. They've had a lot of problems with this car this weekend, but at least it started up. LFB telling us that Patrick's been talking about this for a month, so he better go out and do some good. Not let the MotorsTV commentators down. Well, at least it started, Patrick. Patrick's very happy that he's got to the dummy grid. This is the first time this weekend he's telling us that the car has been moving. Yesterday he didn't even get out of the paddock because of a transmission problem. His team's called Team Amical, and they have been indeed very helpful and managed to get the car going again with a little bit of help from some friends.
Comme on dit chez moi, c'est pas plus vite qu'à fond.
Non, c'est un peu comme ça. Mais surtout, c'est terminer, aller jusqu'au bout.
He just wants to get to the end of the race. He says he's taking time to put his helmet on. And he's made it out of the dummy grids. We'll find out how Patrick Rivet and the little Dutch Bonnet got on later on. Green light then for the first race for Plateau number 2, and the grid steams through. Well, Patrick's got lights behind him. I hope that's not just the Chates car. Full dark now at Le Mans. Still plenty of spectators to watch the fantastic scenes. Full grids for all of the 6 Plateau, which means 68 cars out on the track at any one time. Porsche 356. We're looking down through the field to see if we can see Patrick coming through. And they're still waiting. Oh yes, there he is. He has got started. I missed that. Thank you for the replay, guys. The next Plateau car is ready to come out into the pit lane as we're watching the 19 Vincent Lisnard, the Porsche 356A, one of the Lotus in problems early as well. Didn't see Patrick coming through there. I do hope he's going to get to the finish of this race. He's been looking forward to it for such a long time. I fear our cameraman at the Dunlop curves is looking back through the field more in hope now than anticipation as we get the Mercedes-Benz 300 through and the Jaguar XK120, the 1950. What a svelte machine that is. Now I would suggest that his teammate's not quite ready for him. That might be an unscheduled pit stop. Not as slick as I think the team would have liked, is all I'm going to say about that. Didier Benaroya handing over to Philippe Deschamps. Eventually. A lot of big Heelys here, like that 67 going through. Jerome Osno. Now, well, that is Patrick still going. That's good news. Haven't seen him past our cameras for a while, but he's still carrying on. Meanwhile, in the Jaguar pit, the world's longest pit stop. Well, at least he didn't stall it on the way out. That is a great sight in the darkness, isn't it? The Dunlop Bridge. '52 is the TR2 Triumph of Fabrice Mestro and Philippe Blouet. So many French drivers loving the old British cars. Nigel Webb in the C-Type there, driving on his own. And despite the late hour, still a good crowd trackside. Is the Maserati 300S. That's at the sharper end of the field. Watch out for the 15 of Alex Buncombe as well, the C-Type Jag, and the number 4 of Roger Earl, Gavin Pickering and Tony Pickering. That's a D-Type. 47 there is the Austin Healey 100S. Being very composed. Dear, that's not how the manufacturer intended it. Those spectacular photographs for someone as the 33 Austin Healey with the hardtop goes through. Well, there is the Jaguar D-Type, the number 4 that won by 9 seconds. Now, how did Patrick get on? Oh, not the result he was looking for. He says he made the first sighting lap behind a very slow car who was blocking him. Now, he told us that I did overtake him and a couple of others, and we did see it, Patrick. You're absolutely right. We've got it on tape. He was meant to stop on lap 3, but there was warning lights and the loss of power. Between Mulsanne and Indianapolis, there was some smoke. They cut the engine and coasted down Indianapolis. He's had to come back on the assistance truck, and the bad news is it's a seized cylinder and the engine won't restart. Oh dear. Well, that's about it for now. The headlights are going on because we're going into the dark, and when we're back with you again, it's the nighttime races, the second races for all the plateau. I'm John Hindhaugh. Bye for now.
The Le Mans Classic with Richard Mille and EFG Bank.
Le Mans Classic. powered by RadioLeMans.com.